Well, hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Lyndon. Thank you so much for coming. In this video, I want to think about what you should focus on as a beginner and an intermediate and even an advanced saxophone player, in my opinion. Now, this is not the definitive list of categorically biblical, all of that stuff. It's just my opinion. It's just really to give you some ideas to think about, because in this day and age is totally different from years and years and years ago when I started playing the saxophone. You couldn't find any information at all. I mean, you could maybe get a book from the library, or maybe there was a teacher who lived like an hour away. It was really hard to get any instruction or to get any information about playing the saxophone. But nowadays it's the opposite end. If you type into Google or a search engine or YouTube saxophone instruction, you'll get bombarded with thousands and thousands of millions of hours of instruction, different people telling you to do different things, and obviously I'm a part of that in YouTube. So the problem is that you face this tsunami of information, and what do you really focus on? And that's what this video is about. It's also in response to some feedback that you've given me, that people that are watching my YouTube clips have given me asking what they should focus on, or could I do a video about what to focus on in your saxophone progress for beginners or intermediate players. So here it is. While I'm on the subjects of my fabulous, wonderful YouTube subscribers and viewers, thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. Subscribing to my channel. It really helps the channel if you do subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. Thank you for your comments, thank you for your feedback, thank you for buying me coffees, which you can do if you want to, and it's greatly appreciated. And please keep giving me your amazing feedback, because that is shaping this channel. So let's get on with it. So I've made a PDF. Now, again, with the feedback, what I was doing before was handwritten sheets, and then I'd take a screenshot, but I need to up my game. So I've got PDFs, and I'm going to make a link that you can download this sheet that you're going to see come up in a moment with these thoughts that I've put together. So what should I focus my saxophone playing on? As a beginner, I've got to say the most important thing, what do you think I'm going to say? The most important thing to focus on as a beginner saxophone player is getting familiar with your major scales, being able to play your major scales and just getting familiarity with some of them. So there are 12 of these major scales. Ultimately, we're going to need to know them all. But as a beginner, you don't need to know them all, but the ones that you know, it would be good to know really well. And what I mean by that is knowing that C major has no sharps and flats, and G major has one sharp in it. And what is that sharp? It's F sharp. So having that knowledge. And D major has two sharps, and that's F sharp and C sharp, and A major, and so on and so forth. So as you work your way around, be able to play the scale by ear if you can. That would be amazing. Know what the notes are. So if somebody was to come up to you and say, how many sharps and flats in D, instead of going, oh no, wait a minute, I do know this. Now hang on a second, is it 3, is it 4, is it, instead of having to guess, knowing for sure that D major has 2 and what those 2 sharps are. The reason for this, that if you're crystal clear about the journey that you're going to make on the saxophone, the musical journey, in this case D major, if you're clear about that, then you've got a much better chance of playing it accurately when you put the instrument in your hands and mouth. So definitely knowing your major scales, and knowing the root and the third and the fifth and the seventh. And again, if you could learn what those notes are, that would be amazing, and that is going to put you in good stead for all of your saxophone journey. It's really hard for beginners to connect major scales up to anything which is useful, functional, practical, or fun. And so today I'm going to make a video about that as well, so look out for that. It will be on my channel. But you have to trust your instructor, your teacher, me. You have to trust me when I tell you that this is so mind-bogglingly important that if you don't have your major scales, it's going to make everything really difficult. So major scales has got to be the number one thing. The second thing that I've put on my list for beginners to focus on is, well, what's the saxophone all about? What do we do with saxophone? You play tunes, so learn some tunes. Learn some tunes on your sax. Preferably learn your tune by ear, and preferably be able to play it with a backing track if you can. That would be brilliant because it sounds great. It gives your saxophone playing context to play it with a backing track, and if you did play it for a friend, that would sound really nice. Playing with backing tracks makes your rhythm nice and strong, and makes sure that you're phrasing everything correctly, and I can't see what the downside is. Plus, it's enjoyable and it's fun, and as you develop as a beginner and turn into an intermediate or an advanced player, you might be playing with a band or doing gigs, and what are they going to do then? They're not going to ask you to do anything other than tunes, you know, so tunes has got to be really, really important. And pick your tune carefully. Pick something that you know and that you like and that is enjoyable and gives you a bit of a stretch. And if your instructor isn't giving you tunes, then you should definitely ask for them. Another thing that you could think about as a beginner is start to get comfortable with the difference between major scales and minor scales. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about what that difference is in this video because that's not what it's about, but that would be really, really, really excellent for you to get comfortable with minor scales as well. Nobody's expecting you to learn them all or know them perfectly, but just kind of introduce yourself to the idea of minor scales and feel reasonably comfortable about what they are and what the difference between them and major scales is. That would be really, really, really good. The number 4 on my list is reading music. So learn to read music. It would be a good time to start. You're a beginner saxophone player, why wouldn't you do that? Now, I come from a slightly different world because when I was starting to learn saxophone, I did everything by ear. I didn't really have any tuition. I was self-taught and I just learned to play by ear. And that's had a knock-on effect all throughout my personal growth. So I do recommend that you start to learn to read music. I can't really see what the downside is. It's going to open up all kinds of doors for you, and although in my personal growth it's not essential, it is a really, really, really good thing to have, and I would just do it. Start on your music reading skills. There's so many resources out there that you can find for the things that I've mentioned, like backing tracks and reading music. Tom Play is really good for that, and which is an app that you can buy that will help you read music, and there's loads of reading music apps. So be resourceful, go and have a look at the millions of opportunities there are for you to develop your music reading skills using the internet and apps and things like that today. Just take advantage of them. It's a good thing. The last thing that I've got on my list, and by the way, there's no particular hierarchy of order here, I think you should do all of these things, is jamming. You know, improvising on major scales or improvising on tunes, or if you can, improvising on a minor scale. That's got to be such an enjoyable thing to do. It might be a bit scary if you've never done it before, but that's okay. This is all part of the growth cycle. So jamming, and what do I mean by jamming? Improvising a little bit, even if it's just running up and down the major scale. And I've made lots of videos about how you can jam on a major scale. I'm hopefully going to make one today as well. So have a look out for those if you're not sure. So those are the things that I would focus on as a beginner. How about intermediate players? So if you're an intermediate player, I would say everything that I've just mentioned, all of that, you need all of that, plus, right, your major scales in all keys now. If you've got all your 12 major scales, I would definitely, if you can play all your 12 major scales by ear, I wouldn't really call somebody that can play all of their 12 major scales by ear a beginner anymore. I think you've made that transition between your beginnership and your intermediate phase. The intermediate phase, in my opinion, the beginner only lasts a little while, and then your intermediate phase lasts a really, really long while, and then if you keep working, eventually you'll get advanced, and that is another section. But the intermediate section for me is where most people kind of reside, intermediate or advanced. So playing your major scales in all 12 keys is definitely something that that I would use to describe a more intermediate player. And then having a bigger tune repertoire would definitely, if you've got, 10 or 12 or 15 tunes that you can play all by ear, and you can do those competently and maybe do a little bit of improvisation through, then that would be absolutely fantastic. And I think that would be a great thing to focus on. So carry on working on your scales and develop your repertoire of tunes would be a good thing to do. The next thing that I've got is chord charts. So this is huge. This is a massive area of development. Understanding major 251s and minor 251s would be a really good thing to start to have a look at. Again, my channel covers a lot of this ground and explains these things if they're new to you, and there's loads of resources out there that you can use to learn about chord charts, because for a saxophonist, playing chord charts is going to be a really beautiful thing to do. I mean, it's just a lovely thing if you're able to do it. And if you want to improvise your way through jazz standards, then chord charts are the way to go. But even if you're in a band and you want to do solos, then understanding chord charts is definitely the way to go. So that would be a deep dive for me. If I had a client here and they weren't a beginner, chord charts is definitely something, and understanding chords is definitely something that I'd be working on with them. As well as point number 4 here, which are understanding the modes of the major scales, and these last two things connect up with one another. They're related. In fact, everything that we've discussed is related, but particularly understanding chord charts and the modes of a major scale are really significant and linked in. So knowing what the modes are, understanding how they operate, knowing what the chord tones of each one of the modes, those are all things that would be very worthy of you spending your time practicing as a intermediate saxophone player. I think those would be really good things. And understanding, point number 5, understanding harmonic minors. So getting familiar with harmonic minors at all, making sure that you're okay with those would be a really good thing. And ultimately you want to know your harmonic minors in all keys, and this is going to tie in to lots of stuff, improvisation and chord charts. It's just going to tie into everything. Harmonic minors, can't even say harmonic minors are absolutely an essential piece of kit. They're so beautiful, they sound so gorgeous, and they're so versatile in the ways that you can use them that you really do want to get those down. Point number 6 as an intermediate player would be performance experience. So you're looking to get some performance experience, and that could come in lots of ways. Maybe you'd like to be part of a band. Maybe you've been to a jam session or an open mic night, or maybe you've done a gig of some sort. So gigs can come in all shapes and sizes. Personally, I've made a career out of playing at weddings and corporate functions and playing with DJs, and it's been a wonderful thing to do that I've really enjoyed. And I've done that with backing tracks, or I've done it with my wife as a singer, or I've done that with bands as well. So getting some experience in some kind of performance, public performance, would definitely be something that would help me describe somebody as a intermediate / maybe advanced player, but definitely intermediate. That's not something that you would do as a beginner quite so much, although you could. And another thing that an intermediate player, I would definitely suggest that you spend your time doing some transcription. Transcription is fantastic. You could transcribe melodies. By the way, transcription, if you're not 100% sure, trans means to move and scribe means to write down. So you're listening to a tune and then writing it down either in letter names or in music. You're writing down the melody of a tune, or you could also transcribe somebody's solo, and these are fantastic things to do. If you transcribe a saxophone player's solo, then that's going to help you develop language, the language that they're speaking. Maybe it's bebop or jazz or whatever, but transcription is a really good way to go, and that is what I would focus my efforts on. I think my channel is more kind of focused towards beginners and intermediate players, but just in case you're thinking about, what advanced players focus on, I would say all of the above. If you're an advanced player, you'd need to have everything that we've just talked about really down, plus being really good advanced chord charts, really understanding chord charts on a very much deeper level, and being able to navigate your way through a chord chart and make a really interesting solo. Having a wider and deeper repertoire of tunes would be another thing that would mark out an advanced player. Do you know this tune? Yes, I do. Do you know Wave? Yep. You know, can you play it? What about Stolen Moments? Yeah, I can play it. What about, you know, Autumn Leaves or Summertime or you know, Charlie Parker tunes? That you have like a large repertoire of songs that you're able to play, including the improvisation. And as an advanced player, some more advanced scales, some more exotic scales, things like diminished scales, altered scales, modes of the harmonic minor, like Phrygian dominant scales, whole tone scales, and the other scales that you wouldn't maybe work on quite so much as an intermediate player. You might touch on some of them, but really you'd want to have those down. Really understanding diminished scales, which are not really sort of super complex in their construction, but in their application you've really got to know a lot of information about how they fit and where you put them. And altered scales are, I think, in my mind, the mark of a more advanced player. Advanced players are going to be able to read music really well. I mean, they just are, and that is an ongoing job with reading music. So, you know, definitely that would be the mark of an advanced player. And the last point, the ability to improvise really competently and confidently and fluently, and having that kind of jazz language in their improvisation, so that you can hear that they know what they're doing, along with a beautiful sound. By the way, I probably should have mentioned, developing your sound at any point, beginner, intermediate or advanced, is definitely a good thing to do. So those are my thoughts. My big disclaimer, it says on the end of this sheet, this is not a guide. You know, this is not the definitive guide. It doesn't have to be like this. This is just some thoughts that I've based on my years of experience of teaching people, and kind of understanding where the boundaries are, and putting some imaginary boundaries between beginner and intermediate. Of course, if you find yourself you're a beginner and you're in a band, then you need to focus on the stuff that the band are doing. You need to focus on their repertoire, and maybe the scales would take, you know, slightly second place to that, because for practical reasons. That's certainly what happened in my own growth. Right, I'm going to stop. I really hope you found that useful. Thank you so much for suggesting that I make this video. Thank you to all the lovely people that have bought me coffees. If you'd like to contribute towards the health of this channel, then please do subscribe. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.